Daniel 7 is a beautiful foretelling of Jesus Christ, and that's why I want to go through it today. Also, Daniel 7 fits very neatly into the theme that we've seen so far in Daniel, the theme of humility and pride, and of the beasts as well. So we're going to see it all playing out. You'll see how the book has been sort of written, climaxing at this part in Daniel 7. So, when it comes to the beasts, I'm not going to go through all the references to beasts that I did last time. Suffice to say that when humanity acts like a god and wants to do their own thing, they end up becoming like a beast. That's sort of a theme throughout the Old Testament, which I could have picked up last time. Very briefly, we see this with Adam and Eve, the first humans. They were cast into the wilderness where the beasts roam, because they wanted to be like God. And they wanted to know good and evil. And as you saw with Cain and Abel, they ended up becoming like beasts themselves. Cain killed Abel. He acted like a beast. He sort of devoured his brother. And God says to Cain that sin is crouching, waiting to pounce on him, because sin is sort of a I'm going to say anthropomorphized, that's not the right word. Sin is likened to a beast. It's crouching, waiting to pounce on you. So we see this in the first few pages in Genesis. So, in fact, actually, let's recap that a wee second, because it does help to bring us to where we are. In day 6 of creation, let's go back to creation story. Day 6. The animals are created first, and then the humans are created second, okay? And the humans were created to rule over the wild animals, the beasts, okay? That was the way it was supposed to be. And in Genesis 3, and look, you don't have to read it up here, or look it up, but I'll just let me read it for you. In Genesis 3, we see the humans are actually deceived by a beast. So rather than humans ruling over the beasts come and they deceive the humans. Genesis 3 verse 1, the serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field. It's the same word used in Genesis 3 verse 1. And the serpent said to the woman, did God actually say you shall not eat of the tree of the garden? And they're told, if you eat of the tree of the garden and the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, you won't die, you'll become like a god. But here's the thing, they are already like a god because they're made in his image. So they actually already do look like a god, or God himself. But they want this knowledge, they eat the fruit, and of course they're cast out of the garden into the realm where the beasts live, the wilderness. And they start acting like beasts. And like I said earlier, Cain acts like a beast by killing Abel. Beasts are the ones who devour each other and tear each other to shreds after the fall. Humans shouldn't be doing that. And then we saw that Cain went off and built a city of violence. And then after the flood, Ham, if you remember 2 weeks ago, Ham, who was cursed because of what he did to his father, his descendants also built cities of violence. One in particular, a guy called Nimrod, one of Ham's descendants, boasted about the violence that he had. He was a warrior, and he built the city of Babylon. And these big cities, these big empires were built on bloodshed. So they're beastly cities. There's a sort of a violence associated with them. They're cities that act like beasts. And Daniel is in this beastly city of Babylon, as we are at the minute. And it looks like the beastly city has the upper hand. They've come in, they've destroyed Jerusalem. They've taken all the Israelites captive. Looks like the beasts are ruling over God's people. It's not the way it should be. God's people are to rule over the beasts. Back to Eden. Humanity was promised that the seed of the woman, a human figure, would come and crush the beast. And at the same time, they will be struck by the beast. So this human is going to defeat the beast through his death. And of course, we know this is pointing to Jesus. That was right at the promise at the start. And throughout the Old Testament, we see these encounters with beastly cities like Canaan and Babylon and Assyria and so on. These are empires, beastly empires built on violence and bloodshed that rise up, and they often persecute God's people. And again, it's not the way it's supposed to be. God's people are supposed to rule over the beasts. Are you with me so far? Yeah. Now, these are beastly empires. There are beastly empires still to come, like the Greeks and the Romans, for example. The Romans persecute God's people. They were the ones in power at the time of Jesus, and they're like a beastly city as well. Violence, bloodshed, persecution. Okay, so get that in your head there. And if you remember, in Daniel so far, we've had these allusions to beasts, which we're not going to go into in any depth. But chapter 1, do you remember Daniel says, I'm not going to eat the food of the king, I'm going to eat vegetables. And it was a case of, I'm going to be what a human's supposed to be, and I'm not going to eat those beastly things. I'm not going to devour flesh, because that's what beasts do. And then we had King Nebuchadnezzar, who turned into a beast. Do you remember? He was proud and he fell, and his hair grew like really long, like a beast, and his nails were like claws. He turned into a beast. So again, here's a likening to beasts. And then chapter 6, the famous one, Daniel is in the den of the beast and the lions. So we've got all these links to beasts throughout, okay? With all that in mind, let's turn to chapter 7 now. So go to chapter 7, let's read the first few verses together. This is the vision that Daniel has. He says, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream, and visions passed through his mind as he was lying in bed. He wrote down the substance of the dream. Daniel said, in my vision at night I looked, and there before me were the 4 winds of heaven churning up the great sea. 4 great beasts, each different from the others, came up out of the sea. The first was like a lion and had wings of an eagle. I watched until its wings were torn off, and it was lifted from the ground so that it stood on 2 feet like a human being, and the mind of a human was given to it. And there before me was a second beast, which looked like a bear. It was raised up on one of its sides, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. It was told, get up and eat your fill of flesh. After that I looked, and there before me was another beast, one that looked like a leopard, and on its back had 4 wings like those of a bird. This beast had 4 heads, and it was given authority to rule. And after that, in my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was a 4th beast, terrifying and frightening and very powerful. It had large iron teeth. It crushed and devoured its victims. It trampled underfoot whatever was left. It was different from all the former beasts, and it had 10 horns. Now notice, it's not likened to any other animal. One was like a lion or a bear or a leopard. This one is nothing like this beast. It's so terrifying. Verse 8. While I was thinking about the horns, there before me was another horn, a little one which came up among them, and the 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. The horn had eyes like the eyes of a human being, and a mouth that spoke boastfully. So Daniel has this dream, and then lo and behold, what's in the dream but beasts, 4 beasts. And they represent 4 kingdoms or empires or powers that are going to come and subvert God's people, rule over them in a sense. And the first 3 are likened to different animals, but the last one is like nothing ever seen before. It's the worst, most terrifying beast, and it's on a rampage to destroy God's people. Again, that's not the way it's supposed to be. God's people are to rule over the beasts, but these beasts are ruling over God's people. Now, if you're in Babylon as one of the exiles in Babylon, you're thinking Babylon is like a beast and it's ruling over us, it's subverting us, it's persecuting us. So you can really see how this is really linking to what's going on in your own life. Now, we could spend days thinking about who these empires are, and commentators don't seem to agree either. Some people say it's referring to Babylon and the others around them. Some people say the 4th beast is referring to Rome. It's coming in the future. Rome's the 4th beast. They don't even agree, the commentators, so I'm not even going to speculate on what these beasts are. I think the point is there are forces and empires that will rise up and persecute God's people and subvert them, okay? That's the point here. But there's hope. Let's read on. As I looked, in verse 9, the thrones were set in place. So these massive thrones, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was white as snow. The hairs on his head were like wool. His throne was flaming with fire, and his wheels were all ablaze. A river of fire was flowing, coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands attended him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court was seated and the books were opened. And then I continued to watch because of the boastful words that the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast was slain and its body destroyed and thrown into the blazing fire. The other beasts had been stripped of their authority, but were allowed to live for a period of time. So Daniel sees these thrones, and the Ancient of Days, who is God himself, sits on one of the thrones. And he's described as being pure and wise, and all the fire flowing from the thrones, it represents judgment. He's going to judge these beasts. And these books were opened for God to judge, and this mad, terrifying beast is slain and thrown into a blazing fire. And the other beasts were brought down too. But that's not all. Look at verse 13. In my vision, at night I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. So, here in this vision, we have one like a son of man. And so the Hebrew word of saying human, the Hebrew word for man is Adam. It's where Adam gets his name. Adam is the Hebrew word for man. So here is the son of Adam, the son of Adam. Now remember Genesis 3? The seed of the woman will destroy the beast once and for all and get struck at the same time. And this Son of Man, if you look at it there, he's coming with the clouds of heaven. That is only described about God himself in the Bible. Yahweh is the only one in the Bible that's described as coming on the clouds of heaven. So what you're being told is this human, this son of Adam, will also be God himself. So who could possibly be both human and God? And the Son of Man was worshipped like God, as if he was God. And he had dominion over all the earth, a kingdom that is eternal. Again, who could it be? Also note that when Adam and Eve were banished from the garden, their rule was kind of put on hold, if you think about it. Their rule over the beasts were put on hold. They were supposed to rule over the beasts. The beasts ended up ruling over them. They didn't have power over the lions and the bears and whatnot. I mean, we can't even today. You go into the Serengeti and walk around the lions, you're not going to last very long. We don't have authority and rule over the beasts. Now, there's a wee hint of that turning around in Daniel chapter 6, where Daniel is in the lion's den and they don't eat him. But up to that point, in a sense, the rule of humanity over the beasts, that throne has been empty. We were supposed to co-rule and co-reign with God. God's sitting on his throne. It's like there's another throne beside him for us to sit on to rule over the animals. That has been empty because of the fall. They were cast out. And up until this vision, that throne is still empty. But now we have this throne now occupied by a new human. Where the first Adam failed, she'd have been sitting on that throne. We have a new son of Adam sitting on the throne. Someone who's also God, who has an eternal kingdom. Who could that be? Now, the next few verses describe the vision again. He sort of asks again, he asks who these beasts are, and he's told that there are 4 different kingdoms and empires that are going to rule. And then Daniel asks about the 4th beast, the most terrifying. And he's told this. Go to verse 27. We'll skip a few verses. He gave me this explanation. The 4th beast is a 4th kingdom that will appear on the earth. It will be different from all the other kingdoms, and it will devour the whole earth, trampling it down and crushing it. The 10 horns are 10 kings who would come from this kingdom. After them, another king will arise, different from the earlier ones, and he will subdue 3 kings. He will speak against the Most High and oppress his holy people, and will try to change the set times and the laws. The holy people will be delivered into his hands for a time, times, and half a time. But the court will sit and his power will be taken away and completely destroyed forever. Then the sovereignty, power, and greatness of all the kingdoms under heaven will be handed over to the holy people of the Most High, and his kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and rulers will worship and obey him. So whoever this empire is, it's going to be brutal. Some people think it's talking about Babylon here. Some people say it's talking about Rome, which is to come, who persecuted the Jews. Some say it's an empire still to come. Something in the future, we don't know. The point is this, so verse 26. The court will sit and his power will be taken away and completely destroyed forever. And when that's happened, verse 27, the sovereignty and the power and the greatness of all the kingdoms under heaven will be handed over to the holy people of the Most High. In other words, humanity will rule with God once again the way it was supposed to happen in the first place. Okay? Now, when Jesus was on earth, he rarely called himself Christ or Messiah or Son of God. By far the most Jesus talked about himself was by calling himself the Son of Man. By far, more than anything else. So every time Jesus is mentioning the Son of Man, people are taken straight to Daniel chapter 7. It's like, for example, again, on the cross, when Jesus says, my God, why have you forsaken me? He was singing the first line of Psalm 22. He was taking people to Psalm 22. He was saying, here, go check out Psalm 22. That's what he was doing on the cross when he said that. When you hear a song in your head, if I start singing a song, you possibly will be able to finish the rest of it. You know, if I sing Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound, you'll be able to finish it off. That's what Jesus was doing on the cross when he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? It's what he's doing here. When he calls himself Son of Man, he wants people to go in their minds to Daniel chapter 7. I've heard that before, the Son of Man. And one of the most striking when he calls himself Son of Man is Mark 14. So I want you to turn to Mark 14 with me here. This is Jesus on trial. So go to Mark 14 and verse 60. And Jesus is giving you a portal to Daniel chapter 7 right here. I'll wait till you get to it. So, verse 60 of Mark 14. The high priest stood up before them, the group of people there, whoever they were, and he asked Jesus, are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you? Jesus remained silent and gave no answer. Again, the high priest asked him, are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? I am, Jesus said. And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven. Now, where do we hear that? Right in Daniel chapter 7. Jesus went around calling himself the Son of Man because people were expecting someone like the Son of Man, Son of Adam. A human, but a human who's also God himself, who will be worshipped. And this Son of Man will bring a kingdom that subverts all the other beastly kingdoms, brings them down. The kingdom of God, kingdom of heaven, Christ's kingdom is going to rule over all the other kingdoms of the earth. And Jesus Christ will take that throne and rule like the humans were supposed to rule. And Jesus time and time again is saying, I'm that person. Every time he says Son of Man, he's saying, it's me. I remember Claire brought this up 2 weeks ago. When Jesus is in the wilderness, the place of the beasts, it says he's with the beasts. In Mark 1, which you don't need to turn to, Jesus went to the wilderness. It says that once the Spirit sent him out to the wilderness, and he was in the wilderness 40 days being tempted by Satan. He was with the wild animals, and the angels attended him. But here Jesus has rule over the wild animals. The wild animals didn't touch them. It didn't say they touched him. So that throne that humanity was supposed to sit on is now occupied by another human. But it took that human to actually be God himself. It's the only way it would work. And so Jesus comes onto the scene as a new Adam, and he rules over the beasts in the wilderness like the first Adam should have done. And he rules over the beastly kingdoms. How does Jesus defeat the beast? He does it by dying. That was the promise in Genesis 3. The son of the human will crush the beast, but at the same time be struck himself. And you see, if you look at the cross was a beastly form of execution, and it becomes Jesus' throne. Jesus is high and lifted up. And those words, high and lifted up, are words used about a king being exalted. We lift this king up high and exalt him and worship him. But Jesus, as a twist, was using it about himself being lifted up on the cross, high for all to see and to ridicule. So for Jesus, his execution becomes his exaltation. The cross becomes his throne. And on that cross, when he dies and gets struck by the beast, he is actually taking up that throne beside the Ancient of Days, and he's bringing all those beasts down. Isn't that fantastic? Go back to Daniel 7 a second. Actually, you don't need to. I'll read it out just. 27, I read it out before. The sovereignty, the power, and the greatness of all the kingdoms under heaven are going to be handed over to the holy people of the Most High, and his kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and all rulers will worship and obey him. Followers of Jesus are going to be given power and dominion and will rule again. That's us. We're God's holy people, and we're going to be given this kingdom to rule again. There will be a time when followers of Jesus are going to rule with him again the way it was supposed to be. And we will rule the world. I don't know how it's going to work, but we're going to rule the world like Jesus does, in his way, as we serve him and as we love Jesus and we love others. And there's going to be a new Eden where things are back to the way it's supposed to be. I see that in Revelation. A new garden city comes down. There's a new heaven and a new earth, and we will rule the way we're supposed to rule. All thanks to Jesus Christ, who suffered and died on the cross and defeated the beasts and subdued those beasts. But he had to die in the process. And this was all, you see in the Old Testament, it was all pointing to Jesus. So the encouragement to those Israelites in Babylon is that there will come someone who will get rid of this beastly empire that's persecuting them. And the encouragement to us is that we have seen that prophecy be fulfilled. We have the benefit of hindsight in a sense. We've seen it all play out, and we've seen Jesus come along. We've seen what he's done, and now we have that son of Adam on the throne, and we worship him. We have confidence then as we follow Jesus that we are following the son of Adam who will rule again, and we look forward to a new humanity where we're going to partner with him in ruling the world that's free from all beasts.